You have to care about people. When you care about people, they can feel it.
You are listening to The Deal Breakdown with Derek Shebby, where we spotlight the best deals out there in B2B sales, from the open all the way to the close. Welcome to the B2B Deal Breakdown podcast, where we give you the play-by-play and some of the best deals out there. I'm Derek Shebby, and I'm excited to be meeting with Ben Wintermute. He's an account manager in the medical device industry. Welcome, Ben.
Derek, thanks for having me.
So excited to hear this story that you have about one of the deals that you closed. I know the listeners are going to get a lot out of it.
I'm excited to share it. Excited to not live up to your expectations.
I know you will. So Ben, could you tell the listeners a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So I actually started trained by the very best here in this Zoom call at Mr. Copy Xerox, and did a couple years there, did some dental sales roles, and then was lucky enough to make that break in the medical device industry, where I haven't looked back since.
Nice. So how many years overall in B2B sales total would you say?
Fresh out of college, first thing I ever did, and never looked back. So I'm going on 12 or 13 years now. I lose count.
So what roles in general, I guess, have you held in B2B sales?
I've always been an account manager of one sort or another. Kind of when I got out of college, my big thing was I know I can work hard, and some people told me I would be good at sales, so I figured I'd give it a rip. And what I looked for was always something I could out hustle people in. So copiers, dental stuff, I looked for industries where I could just work harder than everybody, and that whatever I put into it, I would get out of it. And getting into medical device was a big change in that, because it wasn't just hustling. It was, getting a lot more out of fewer interactions. So I had to kind of change the way that I hustled.
Well, yeah, it's always a challenge then. So tell me a little more about the company you're with now.
So we're a pretty big name. If you go into a hospital, you're going to end up seeing a lot of our products. You're probably going to touch several of them. Might even get a few implanted in you, and might even get cut by a few of them. You might even get a robot operating on you that's one of our company's robots, but that's not what I do. What we do is before the hospital. So we're a line of products that you're going to be transported on, connected to, and that might actually shock you back to life and pump your heart when you can't do it anymore.
Wow. So those are the actual things that you sell.
100%. Yeah. It's a very broad spectrum of products, but it wasn't always. So when I started, all we did was transport products. So legitimately, when a provider comes to your house and tries to move your body from point A to point B, we were trying to do that in a way that was as safe as possible for you and as ergonomic for that provider. And that's all I did. Had a huge region. I was on the road constantly with a big van with, stair chairs and gurneys and patient, loading equipment in the back of it. And I would just drive over Oregon, Idaho, and Montana, do demos, show that, and try to get into somebody's budget cycle. Then about 2 years ago, we merged our bags and took in this whole line of products that went from moving people to now being integral in actually bringing a patient back to life in some cases if their heart had stopped, or keeping them alive, keeping their heart pumping, intubating patients. Wow. Just a massive shift in things psychologically, but really, really amazing stuff. So, I was always really passionate about making sure that firefighters and EMTs were healthy on the job. And then all of a sudden they brought all this onto the table, and it was really heavy and really wonderful.
Yeah. Just to think that what you sell actually saves lives. That's pretty powerful.
It's legitimately what keeps me and I'd say every single person in my company going.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you a reason to come to work every day. You're thinking like, my stuff can really make a difference. So like for the industries wise, I mean, obviously it sounds like there's, I think with the first responders, you got the fire department, right? But then you also have some third party,
private ambulance. Absolutely. Some of my biggest customers are, a private provider. Therefore, their business model is incumbent on making sure that things are driven properly from a cost perspective, cost benefit analysis. So you're doing, TCO type sales. You're showing them that, what you're doing is going to actually help their business thrive. And then you have your municipalities. So those folks are, you're going to board meetings, you're, meeting with everyone up that whole ladder of, battalion chief, lieutenant, getting the line crews, everybody aligned. And, you might even be going to a pancake cookout trying to help them do fundraising to buy your equipment because they want it, but there's no money because, some places are just woefully underfunded, unfortunately.
Wow. That's so interesting. So those are your two main industries. Then you're selling to the private first responders, like the ambulance companies, and you're selling to the government, basically, like the local government.
Yeah, and somewhere in between is hospitals. So,
Yeah.
you would think they would fit into one bucket or the other, but they really do not.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think that they're all three separate. Yeah, for sure. Different decision-making processes, different, decision makers in general.
100%. You go in with a private place, you can, do a presentation if it makes sense, and you might be talking to the owner who can make a decision on the spot.
Yeah.
If you're going to municipality, then you have to get on the budget cycle and know when that budget cycle is. Make sure that you are prioritized appropriately to actually have that come to fruition.
Right.
And then you add 10 levels of bureaucracy to that, and that might be, a hospital. Maybe edit that up.
Yeah. Very interesting. So this particular deal that you're going to share with all of us today, how'd you choose this one?
So I always gravitate towards deals that I feel a personal connection to for one reason or another, and one that you can forge a personal connection with your customers.
Yeah.
And honestly, when you asked me to think of a specific deal, there wasn't another one that I really thought of. And it'll become more clear when we talk about the proposal a bit, but the people involved were wonderful. I had a little bit of experience with some of them, but they were kind of more of a kind of elbowing, kind of playfully sarcastic relationships where we were kind of messing with each other.
Yeah.
And in an instant, the pitch that I delivered got very, very real, where the room was pretty quiet and a little somber. So that kind of flip switching is what made this one of my favorite deals in my entire career.
Oh man, I can't wait to hear this. So what size deal are we talking about though? Like, for you, was it like 1 month budget, like 3/4 budget?
It was over a month. So about 1/10 of my year's budget is what I calculated out to be.
Okay.
Just so happens it's probably the biggest deal of my career, which I shared with the customer even at some point, which I'm not sure if that's a very good thing to do.
Well, I think you're proud. I think you're proud of it. And I think it's, they're proud of probably going with you and what you've been able to help them do. So 1 month budget, a little over 1 month budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. What a great, I'm really excited to hear about this one. So let's talk about, I guess, how did you first find this company? Like, how did you find this deal in the first place?
So this was a municipal customer, and they had reached out to us because they already had one of our products, and they wanted to get a refresh on it, essentially to extend their life cycle and avoid having a future cost came up while they had some money for this one product. So
great. So we got so this was a current customer that was looking for, just looking to get more of what they already had early while they had remaining budget, because it was a government account. And, and so what happened with this? They contact you asking for this, and then you work your magic, obviously.
So they gave me the phone call that every sales rep dreams of, which is, we have this funding available. We have an older version of your product. We'd like to get the newer version, of version 4. And we need you to help us sell this to the people on our board. So we set the meeting predicated on those needs. And I did know that we had version 1, version 2, version 4, and knew a decent amount about it. However, this product had only been in our bag for 6 months at the time. So I was very new to it. You got to remember, I was a guy that was used to slinging gurneys. I'm not a guy that's used to working with products that are going to monitor vital signs and then also deliver energy when your heart needs to be restarted.
Right.
So I set the meeting for at least a few days out, maybe a week out, and do some homework and figure out what's what.
Yeah.
So I did the thing that I think everyone has to do in those situations. It's reach out to people who know more than you.
Sure.
That included some folks who were with the previous company that we merged with. And it also included somebody who had been trying to mentor, who quickly became a teacher to me, who's a former EMT. So I asked him to come along with me to the meeting, got some resources and collaterals on a lot of selling points of the newer version of the product
Sure.
from that senior rep, and set that meeting as quick as I could.
Great. So you set it for a couple days later. So called on a Monday, you're meeting on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I knew that if I tried to go the next day, that we would not have gotten everything out of the meeting that it was capable of. And legitimately at that point, I was still thinking, let's just go and try to make sure that we give them enough selling points to get this new monitor to them. And one thing that I've realized over my career is that sometimes it's important to continue to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
And this is one of those times where I was so caught up in the weeds with all this new stuff going on that I forgot some of my basic selling skills. And whether or not I would have gotten there or not, nobody can say at this point. But it was this young fellow in his 20s that I was trying to mentor that said to me, like, hey, shouldn't we be showing them this automatic compression device too? And I said, yeah, actually, we absolutely should do that. And then we should also show them this power load equipment, but let's make sure that we take care of the customer's needs first. So I wanted to make sure that we had a really good pitch, and then, gave them what they wanted, and then say, oh, and by the way, let's talk about these other things. So we got about halfway through the pitch for the version 4 of our monitor defibrillator, and we were starting to talk about algorithms and what we could do by determining what kind of energy to deliver to the heart at what time, based on their 12 lead, which is basically what their heart's doing at the time, to kind of boil it down as much as possible. Wow. And one of the things that I mentioned was we also have an algorithm that's been modified to help with determining implanted devices, aka a pacemaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, 3 of the people from the customer looked at the chief, who's the main guy, and said, well, we wouldn't know anything about that, would we? And I said, well, I'm sorry, do you guys know about this already? And it turned out the fire chief had been defibrillated many times previously and been brought back to life by the version 1 of our product, and also has a pacemaker.
Wow.
So you don't always have a time when your pitch lands 100%, but I couldn't think of another time in my entire career where I just got so lucky to say the right thing, stab it in the dark a little bit, and have it land that hard. And at that point, I just kind of stopped and said, well, I don't think any of us need to talk anymore about how important these things are. Thanks for sharing that with me. And I'm grateful for, being a partner of yours and being able to be a part of, what you guys do every day. But that's one of the things about this job, that it stops you in your tracks sometimes.
Yeah.
You're never expecting it when it does. But
this is just incredible. So let me just back up a little bit here, because there's so much that you just said here, and I want to digest it. So this was your appointment, and they're expecting to, in this appointment, they're literally expecting just to, it's almost like, give us the contracts to re-sign for more of these type meeting, like the dream meeting that they said that you came in there. Did you come in there with the proposal and with the numbers and the quote for them to re-up just like they asked?
I came in there with some rough numbers, but I wanted to make sure, one of the things that I always do is I predicate a meeting on putting together a proper configuration, because it may be just this box, but there's so many options you can add on to it. And I don't want to, if someone's going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with me, I want to make sure that they know that they're getting exactly what they want. I'm not going to go with really a canned response, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I had a little something, but if I recall correctly, I was planning on coming back to them with the quote after this. This is more of a meeting really to coach them on how we'd improved our products that really looked the same. The box is the same. The internals were all upgraded. So it
Right.
was software upgrades, algorithm upgrades, things like that. So I was actually coaching them how to sell this to their board.
Oh,
Sometimes people don't want you in their board meetings. Their board doesn't want a salesperson there. And after years and years and years, you'll probably get that privilege,
yeah.
but you kind of earn that
Right.
because they've had enough salespeople come in there and probably make an ass out of themselves, frankly, that they're very protective of that. You need somebody to vouch for you pretty hard.
For sure. And the features, these new features with the being able to detect the pacemaker or anything else inside that was different. Was that on the product they were asking for, or was that on a separate product?
That was actually on the product they were asking for, but that one landed so much where I kind of actually used a little bit of that silence to our advantage. I said, we'll make sure and get these quotes put together for you very promptly. While we're here, I also have our specialist on this automatic CPR device. And we're talking about the importance of improving cardiac surviving rates. I was about to tell you how important that is to me, but read the room pretty quickly and realized that I didn't need to tell them how important that was, and said, could we give you a demonstration of this product as well? And so we did. Again, this was a product that I wasn't thinking about bringing out of the bag until this uh, younger fellow reminded me of, like, hey, you want to be good at your job?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's always important to realize that when you mentor somebody, you're actually going to get a lot more out of it. And I heard so many people say that when I was younger, and I never believed it until I lived it.
Yeah.
So of course we brought this thing out. We gave them a demonstration, and this is, hands-on CPR. We all know about that.
Yeah.
When something goes down, this basically does that the whole time when you're moving somebody, gives them as close to perfect CPR as a machine can, and that landed really hard. At which point I said, well, as long as we're showing you the whole bag, we just pushed these two companies together. Let me show you this automatic loading system that we have for the back of your ambulance, as well as, this upgraded gurney, and took them out to my van to do a full demonstration. Actually, if I take that back a little bit, we had planned it ahead of time where we would take the power load system out with the gurney on top of it with the dummy, and actually the automatic compression device would be on the dummy when we brought it out, so it would show the whole system.
Smooth.
We stole that from another rep. Again, when you have a good company with good people, you learn some good tricks. And one of my coworkers in Detroit, I believe, was the first one to show me that trick. And Northern Cal rep did it quite a bit too. So we showed them all these things, and we gave them the whole dog and pony show.
Yeah.
And we were having a great time doing it. By that point, there was kind of a personal connection that had been forged. And at the end of it, they said, okay, give me a quote for everything. And I swallowed, probably just like I did mid-sentence there.
Yeah.
For everything? Okay, well, I want you to know that if you get X amount of components, every component you get, you're going to get a slightly adjusted multiplied discount rate. There's like a tiered system. And I had worked out in my head where basically all of my customers, if you buy one of my products, you get this price. If you buy two, you get this price, and so on and so forth. And they didn't give a rip about anything I just said when I talked about pricing schedule. And I was, again, like, what is going on here? Like, this is the ultimate deal that I can't understand. So sure enough, we brought it back to them. And then 2 months later, they had told me that they were doing construction on a building, had to adjust it, and came in under budget. So they were using that budget shortfall to purchase this equipment. So, were I trying to upsell them and get the maximum amount of dollar value out of it, then I'm sure I could have done that. But when you're working in an environment like I do, you don't really, you don't think that way. You kind of get into that whole take care of your customers and they take care of you.
Yeah. Well, I imagine even when you're selling to government in general, it's, you know that they get it one, they're really getting it for the whole fleet, the whole area. And so there's probably, solid price that you'd use in general for that sort of environment. So there's
very little variance. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the proposal, then, it sounds like this meeting, this first appointment that you had, and just the way that you described in your messaging around what the new version would do just created such a powerful connection, just like you mentioned at the beginning with them, that they immediately saw you as like almost like family, like you were there with them, like you cared just as much as about their chief, and like you might have been their face of the person that saved his life multiple times. um
Well, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, and this is what gets lost in a lot of cycles, is that you have to care about people. When you care about people, they can feel it. And I have had many times in meetings like that where I have tears in my eyes, and they're real tears. And I can't remember if that was specifically one of them because there's been so many of them, but
yeah
I wouldn't be surprised in the least. But really, the reason that things worked out that well wasn't because of what was said in the meeting. What was said in the meeting was all predicated on the work that went in before.
yeah
Uh, so it was all about having, if I had to give myself credit for anything, because I like to talk about what other people did in this, it would be
yeah
having the self-awareness to know that I needed help. And it's really hard when you've been doing something for 3.5 years and you feel like you're pretty dang good at it, to admit that
sure
you don't have all the tools, all the answers, all the knowledge. I've always been somebody who prided themselves on being a product expert, but there was so much to learn that I had to give myself a little bit of slack and say, I need to reach out to somebody who I think is really an expert, somebody I really respect, who can coach me on this. And that was my counterpart in Colorado, who had given me the information of, here are the upgrades that have been done to this device. Here's why they matter. And here are the things that people will care about in your customers. And also, hey, Mr. 26-year-old former EMT that I thought I was bringing under my wing, I need you with me. And,
yeah
I think that I would have done fine in the meeting myself, but together we did great. And together with the other person who had been supporting me remotely, uh, we ended up putting together what just happened to be the perfect plan. And hey, the stars have to align. There's no doubt. Like when you have a deal like that, I'm talking once in 12 years, that was probably the stars aligning better than they ever had. But I think that they did because of a little bit of humbling myself, a lot of recognizing greatness in other people, and being big enough to know when I needed help.
yeah You chose some really powerful words though too, not to discount that, like your response and you pausing and just taking that moment in. I mean, you said it right. Like why'd you choose this deal? And you talked about how powerful it was. And I would say that, yeah, that it's a very moving story. It sounds like
And just so
just,
you know, the guy that gave me a bunch of crap, he still gives me crap, and I love it every day.
yeah, I love it. That's great. So I guess we don't really need to talk about the proposal because this is the way it sounds like. And it sounds like because it was government, moving forward was just based
We
upon,
do a tiered proposal structure for them.
okay.
I gave them 3 or 4 different proposals. I didn't know anything about where the money was coming from at this point. You don't really ask those questions. It seems a little bit nosy. Then you come off as kind of a little bit greedy. What I did do is, here's what you wanted, and here's what I can do for you if we get everything all together. And by the end of it, I made concessions that by getting every product, it took the deal from probably 230
Well, let's not go through the numbers. So it took the deal from how big of your monthly budget?
Oh, it would have
What?
been probably 65% of my monthly budget. It was already a good deal. And then it took it to about 150% of my monthly budget.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. The fact that the way that you put it together, packaged it with those tiers, did that. I mean, that tells people that if you're putting together a proposal for your whatever deal you're working on, B2B, you got to look at it. Are you setting it up in a way where you can show the customer that if they do more, there's value for them, but at the same time, it can impact your budget? And did you obviously sell that in the demo like you did with a pretty smooth way? And I'm sure it took practice to get to that point. But yeah, that sounds fantastic for the proposal. Was there any competition that you had to work through that you knew was there too?
There were neighboring counties that had competitive products, and in my line of work, when the competition gets in one place, it kind of spreads like a disease.
Yeah.
So, you know, very 2020 of me, I know.
Yeah.
But so there was a little bit, but it for the monitor side of things, it really wasn't strong competition. What I did was took every other piece of equipment, which has its own competitors and its own subsets, because we're the only people with this particular portfolio. We have several other competitors and several other facets, and I use that to protect that business. So
Right.
when somebody buys all these things at once, then 7, 10 years, that's your customer. So whenever I have the opportunity to, I always want to make sure that I'm well, again, because we're the only company with the particular bag we have. So I want them to see what the value is of working with one person that can do all these things and
Right.
incentivize them to use more of those products. That's what keeps my company happy. It's what keeps my baby fed, and it's what keeps my customers close to me. So
Yeah. And then I guess along those lines, do you have a process that you go about selling all those? Is it like, I guess, is it the demo? Do you show in a demo how all of that technology works together in one demo?
yeah, I mean, always working more on how to make things work together better. But things like bringing the gurney out with the,
Yeah.
having compressions done on it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. Trying to recreate what a real life scene looks like when they're rolling up onto it. A lot of times I've done a road show. So somebody said, "Hey, I want to see this product," and I would say, "Can we block out a little bit extra time?" And then I want to bring everything to you. I want to show you who we are as a
Yeah.
company, what we bring to you. And of course, we're going to focus on what you wanted to talk about today. But hey, you got me here. Why don't we talk about everything?
Yeah. And you find a way to link those in the demo. So it's like one big story, start to finish.
As much as possible. Yeah. I like to tell the story of their alarm rings in their station
They get
or their
dispatched.
dispatch. And I want to go through that call. They show up on scene. They hook up the patient to devices that are going to monitor them. May or may not have some sort of an intervention like a shock in place. May or may not need to put an automatic compression device on that person. May or may not need to intubate that patient and actually clear their airway. Get them onto a gurney, load them in the back of the ambulance, and get them to the hospital, where ultimately that's where my division of my company ends and the next one starts. So that continuation of care is just a little bit about what we do. But then when we drop them off from my division, they go straight to another division, and they are going to get wheeled out on a product that we make. And by the time they leave there, and you'd be amazed how many friends, when they've had babies, will send me messages and say, "Hey, I saw so many of your products when I was there." Um, and none of those people knew who we were before, and they didn't really know what we did. And I try not to talk people's ear off about it at a barbecue, but it's hard because, as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
but by the time they've left their, instance that they're there for, uh, I noticed that they kind of have a little bit of a different understanding about it.
and it sounds like it's just like we talked about at the beginning, your offerings are used in such important moments, whether it's life-saving moments or life-giving moments, different things like that. And it's I can see why there's tears that could come in when you're talking to customers about what they do too.
Yeah, and it's you need something dependable in those times, and
Yeah.
as representatives, we try to embody that. So we want to be dependable people with dependable things that dependable people depend upon. So yeah, that's a lot of that's a lot.
A lot of depending right there. I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So looking back on this deal, because there's been so many, so many great things about this, your deal today. Would you say the three things that won the deal for you, if you were to summarize?
Definitely putting the work in ahead of time, tapping the right resources, and then learning and delivering an impactful pitch that just happened to land on the right ears. I would love to tell you that my pricing structure and proposals were the reason why they blew things up as big as they did. Uh, but I think, that was a part of it, but really they bought into the story of what we do. And we had just enough of a relationship with them where they knew that we meant what we said, and we weren't, uh, you know, going in there without real data, real belief in what we were doing.
Yeah. Well, you believe it too. It's obvious to see that. And it's also a testament for all the people listening that you've got to find a way, whatever it is that you sell, how it makes a difference in their customers' lives somehow, their business. And when they have that connection and they have that passion behind it, it really comes through. Same thing about what looking back, are there things that you would do differently?
Yeah, I think if I was really in a better place in my tenure with my understanding of the products, there's even one product I would have added in there. I think that I left a little bit on the table. And I was afraid that by throwing all this at them, that I might be asking too much. And I leaned into that fear when instead I should have trusted our instincts and trusted our story a little bit more, and we could have actually got them some laryngoscopes potentially. So, it wouldn't have been a massive difference, but it would have been a difference. And this young guy that was with me, and I hope he listens to this because I'm going to call him this young guy forever. But
Yeah.
Warren, you know who you are. Um, he was what took that leap for me of being nervous about new products, new people, new demonstrations, and things that I wasn't completely confident in. And he had this attitude, like I remember I had when you were training me, which is, of course, let's try this. Why wouldn't we
Why
try
not?
this? No
Yeah.
reason not to. And it made me remember what it was like to be fearless and to not have any anxiety about asking too much.
Yeah. Well, especially when it's such a personal thing too. I mean, the conversation that you had, you might be like, we have a total connection at this point. I don't want to have that flip over in any way and change. Um, but now this has been such a fantastic deal. Any final words of wisdom, things to share that you would tell all the B2B salespeople listening to this? Any advice?
I think I already touched on them, but I want to kind of recap on the ones that have meant the most to me. And number one, thank you, Derek, because sitting here and reflecting with you on some things that I've done professionally with somebody who coached me as a young rep and was a big part of my upbringing. And I know we haven't seen each other for quite some time, but I hope you know that I always think of you that way. Has been really
Thanks.
valuable. And I really appreciate that. But knowing when you don't know something is sometimes the best thing that you can do as a salesperson. Um, we are people who are driven by these images we create in our head, and you have to have some self-realization. Know yourself enough to know when you need to get a little bit more. And I'm so fortunate that I have the resources that I have in my company that were there for me when I needed them the most, but they're not always there. So you might always just have to dig in and figure something out. But never walk in to a meeting unless you've got everything in your ammunition that you can bring to the table. And if you have to delay the meeting so that you can build up your arsenal a little bit, then you should do that. Make sure that you do everything you can to bring everything you can to your customers and put your heart into it. Because if you do that, they're going to see it. And, make sure you care about what you're doing too, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to keep you going and keep your gas tank full. Because we've all had those days when it gets low, and I still do in my job right now, but it always gets filled up really quickly when I hear a good story from one of my customers.
Well, this is a great story that I know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of, Ben. So if people want to reach out to you further to maybe ask you some more questions, or maybe even to get some mentorship, like you're talking about some more, what's the best way?
LinkedIn's always good. If anybody ever wants to try to be a pen pal, they can do that on my email. It's wintermuteben@gmail.com. I will probably reply in the evenings. So if there's a few typos, then don't judge me. At LinkedIn, I'll try to be a little more official.
So on LinkedIn, it's just linkedin.com/in/Ben Wintermute.
There's not a whole lot of us out there. I'm not too hard to find.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen any other ones. You're right. Well, hey, thanks so much, Ben, for sharing this story. I'm glad you shared this story. There's so much heart in it. And I know people are going to get so much out of it.
Thanks, buddy.
So that's it for today's session, everybody. Thank you so much, Ben, for helping all of our fellow B2B salespeople out there improve their sales skills. For our listeners, if you'd like today's highlights, be sure to check out our summary on salesin21days.com. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, then you have to come check out our free Top Performer Academy course. Inside it, I'll give you 12 sales tips that only the best salespeople do on a daily basis. Tips ranging from cold calling to running effective appointments, handling objections, and creating urgency in your deals. You can get it 100% free at www.modernSalesTraining.com/free. That's modernSalesTraining.com/free. These 12 tips could be the difference between you having a good month or an incredible one. I hope to see you there.